Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. I'm honored to be speaking in front of you today. Yes, I'm Danna. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an author and a speaker and a hypnotist as my day-to-day. And I specialize in trauma and illness as a hypnotist, but I've seen a variety of people with a variety of different challenges. And as a speaker, I like to speak on a variety of topics, but my favorite happens to be speaking about the mind and the power of the mind and the fact that we are underutilizing the power of our minds. So today I'm speaking to all of you about what I call the magic of flow, overcoming mental and emotional obstacles. So essentially that title might sound a bit abstract or whimsical, yet in reality I believe flow is actually really something tangible. And all I really mean about flow is the feeling that you're moving in the right direction. Or even more so, the feeling that who you are in your core as a person is being fully expressed in your behavior and speech. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, actually, before I go there, I'd like to ask all of you a question. And that is, how many of you feel that who you are in your day-to-day interactions is fully aligned, or even 95% aligned, with how you behave and how you speak? Who would say, yeah? Awesome, okay, a good percentage of you. Beautiful, that's great. And okay, well, I'll ask you this then. On that note, who here thinks or has experienced or has had many experiences where you feel a certain way, yet in reality your logical mind allows you or kind of convinces you to say something that you're not feeling or behave in a certain way? Yeah. Essentially negates the way you're feeling. We've all been there? Yes, okay. Yeah? Beautiful, okay. Yes, okay, so we're all a victim to it. Okay. So what that is, when the way you're feeling is actually negated by what you say and how you behave, is called internal conflict. Yes? Okay. So internal conflict happens when who you are and the messages and how you express yourself are negating each other. And what I believe is flow, or the magic of flow, and getting back to that is getting back to who you are and allowing that to be expressed in your day-to-day. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, even before we go there, I'd actually like to ask you another thing. Are any of you, or have any of you heard of the fact that as human beings as a whole, there's a shift in consciousness or something like that? Yes? Okay. As individuals, we're becoming more aware of who we are, we're becoming more in line with who we are, and that is, yeah? Okay, I'm getting a lot of head nods. Okay, great. Beautiful. And that's even happening on a global scale, even in the corporate world. For example, Google, as a great example, has a mindfulness team, a team that solely works on mindfulness of its employees, allowing its employees to become more present. So, okay, actually I might go on a little bit of a tangent here, and sometimes that happens. Einstein, I'm going to go with Einstein. Einstein is actually one of my favorites of all time of history. I love him not only for his genius, but because he was an individual, and he was just who he was. That's who he was, that's who he's going to be. So Einstein and his theory of relativity wasn't something that came in any logical sense. It was something that was said to have been dreamt into the world in a meditative state. And then it wasn't until 10 years later that they actually logically proved his theory of relativity. So what does that mean? Or even another example, since we're continuing on this tangent. Every time you shower, or every time you're about to go to sleep, when you're frantically writing these notes, what's happening is your conscious mind is taking a chill pill, and your subconscious mind is allowed to kind of take over. So what does this all mean? So Einstein in a meditative state has this dream where the theory of relativity drops in, or you're showering and you have this brilliant idea that comes out of nowhere. That's all your subconscious mind, that's your creative mind. And so actually what Google's doing is not only for the wellness of their employees, it's actually for the future forward thinking of their business, because all relevant ideas come from this meditative state. Cool, right? Okay. So how do we get back into this magic of our flow, our own individual flow, our own individual personalities, and how do we express that more beautifully in the world? Because I do believe that our higher purpose is to really be expressive of who we are and even have that touch into the business world and corporate world. And actually, since we're going on another tangent, I also believe it happens. I'm sorry, it happens all the time. Ideas come in. I actually believe that women will be at the forefront of this shift in consciousness. I'm getting more head nods. I actually believe that not only women, but women in the workforce will be paving the way. And not only just women in the workforce, I believe that women in the workforce who are more fully aligned with who they are will be the leaders of this shift in the corporate world and beyond. Okay, so back to flow. How do we get back to more so who we are, so that can be more fully expressed, so our higher purpose in this world can be realized? So I believe it comes with 3 I's. And no, that's not I, and it's not even me. It's 3 I words. And I happen to love I words in general, which when I was writing this speech, I recognized that there was 1,000 I words that hit me at once. Ideas, innovation, inspiration, even infrastructure. That's an awesome I word. Yet there's 3 I words specifically that I work with on a day-to-day basis. And those 3 words are imprint, or imprinting, imagination, and intuition. Okay. So let's start with imprinting. Would anyone have, imprinting of the mind, would anyone have an idea of what I mean by imprinting or imprint? Any guesses out there?
Maybe affirmations.
Okay. That's a good one. Anyone else? Sure. That's awesome. She said leaving a mark on the world. But ducks. Leave an imprint. Okay. Yes. Okay, I got it. And leaving an imprint with them, or even mother leaving an imprint on the baby, yeah. Which is a great example. I would never have thought about that. So, imprinting, actually an imprint on the mind, I would have to say, what I believe is imprinting is anything and everything that has ever happened to you in your life. Imprinting are all the memories and every single thing, every scenario, every situation that has ever happened to you that has created the story of your life, created your identity, or created the beliefs around who it is that you are. That is what imprinting is. And imprinting is neither positive nor negative. Imprinting can really be mundane because the mind has to learn in everyday memories. It has to have the capacity to remember things in order to function naturally. For example, brushing your teeth. Yes, brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth is something that hopefully you do, a couple times a day. That's natural to you. It's nothing so hard. But in reality, as a child, it was something that had to be imprinted in your mind. It is something that you had to learn over and over. And the more and more you did it, the more and more it became natural. So that's an example of just what imprinting is. It creates a compilation of memories in order for it to become natural to you. So another example of imprinting, I'm sure you've heard of the 21-day habit change. Yeah? Okay, that's a pretty famous method to change your habits. So for those of you who don't know what it is, it's essentially if you've been, for example, eating one way your whole life, and now you want to eliminate sugar. So you go 21 days not eating sugar, and then within those 21 days, there should potentially and hopefully be a shift in habit. And what that means, and what's basically happening, is over those 21 days, you are creating new memories, new imprints, day to day to day. And after 21 days, there's a compilation of 21 different, or more than that, scenarios that are now have been effectively imprinted to your mind, creating a more natural response. Okay? So that's the idea of imprinting. That's what it is. So then there's a negative imprint. So what happens if potentially something has happened to you in your life, and then for the next 20, 30, 40 years, you still have this belief system around it? There's an example I can give you around that as well. I see this every day, every hour, essentially, with every single person I work with, that potentially there's one situation, that has happened in your life that has created a huge belief system, a significant impact in the way you think about yourself, that you've carried on through the rest of your life. A good example would be, let's say you're in school and you're 7 years old and your teacher yells at you. And yells at you in such a way that it shocks your mind, and it says, okay, this you're going to pay attention to. So after that, when you're a little bit awakened and your mind says, okay, pay attention to this, she says something which makes you feel a little less than intelligent. So from that instance on, which it could potentially have just been one instance, from that instance on, for the next number of years, you're overcompensating for something that potentially wasn't even valid, but just created an impression on you. Okay. So that's an example of an imprint, a negative imprint that we carry and that creates a belief system that's not necessarily true. So I get questioned a lot by people that know that I work with trauma and other issues, that what happens if, per se, there wasn't one instance, but a lifetime of instances, because we've all lived lives and we've all had many different things happen to us. So what's beautiful about that and working, I'll take a step back. What I do within the hypnotic work that I do is called regression therapy. Have any of you heard of it?
Yes.
Regression? No. Yeah? No? Okay.
That brings back old memories.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So regression therapy is when you go back into earlier memories, childhood memories, in order to help resolve the core reason why you have the issue you have today. To get back to the first initial instances that created the belief patterns that potentially created the behavior now. So we basically track back in time, and I do this through guided meditation, through visualizations. I relax the mind and body. I bring them into a relaxed state of mind, and then memories pop up that are specifically correlated to the issue at hand. So we don't have to clear up all the memories that have happened to you in your life that have potentially caused some unhappiness now. The most significant ones are the ones that will actually pop up, which is actually really fascinating. The ones that have the most charge, the ones that are most specifically related to the ailment, are the ones that will actually pop up. So I'll get into the resolution part later. So then I get another question from people when you're overcoming mental and emotional obstacles, is, especially when it comes to trauma, is, what if I'm scared? What if I don't want to go there? I don't want to open that box, because what happens if I open that box and I can't close it? So there's a couple things with that, and I get that all the time. And I don't blame them. I don't blame people, because there's actually a reason we repress memories. There's a reason we don't want to go there. And there's a reason it doesn't come up consciously all the time, because we're just trying to live. We're just trying to be human. So what's actually super interesting about that is, I would say 85% of the memories that pop up, even if it's dealing with depression or anxiety or anything like that, 85% of the memories that pop up are actually very mundane. Memories that you would feel and see and you'd be like, no way. That is completely not related to anything we're talking about in this moment. Yet in reality, as a 2-year-old, for example, something that happened to you now, as you look back and as an adult looking back to what happened to you as a 2-year-old, the 2-year-old didn't have the coping mechanisms, didn't have the education at the time that it's okay what happened. So the 2-year-old feels a bit lost, feels a bit confused, But the adult looking back in this moment knows it's mundane. It doesn't mean anything. So that's number one. Like 85% of these memories are really non-threatening at all. So number two, if a memory does come up that has pain behind it and is traumatic, what's interesting about that is you go into the memory kind of as like you're a bird flying above it, and you're a bit detached. You're not really reliving it, you're reviewing it. You're just seeing it. Again, you're an adult now. You're looking back at what happened from a detached kind of up here way. So does that make sense? Okay. So all of it, and again, it's all in this meditative state, which is very comfortable, very relaxed, and actually kind of fun. So when you're exploring these memories, it's actually interesting to you to go back in time and see how you've lived. So it's fascinating. Okay. So that brings me to my next I, the resolution part of how we overcome mental and emotional obstacles, at least as a hypnotist, is imagination. And imagination might be my favorite word. You too? Okay, I'm getting a lot of confirmation over here. I love it. Beautiful. Imagination. So how do we work with imagination? Hypnotists love imagination. It's what we do. We work a lot with metaphors. We work a lot with pictures. We work a lot with just creating new perceptions in the mind, just allowing the mind to have a little bit more breathing room. So the way you think, the way every single individual in here thinks, we think we have to think the way we think. And we are very attached to our thinking. But in reality, with hypnosis, what's interesting is you kind of broaden the perspective a little bit. And it shows you that there are probably 1,000 other ways to think. And also, especially with memories, it's just interpretation. So again, as the 2-year-old, when that person walked away from you, you interpreted. That's it. You're making an interpretation that you're lost. You're making an interpretation that you're confused. But as an adult, you're making another interpretation that you're fine. Do you see where I'm going with that? So the way we use, yeah? Okay, great. It's very abstract. All this stuff is super abstract, so I try to take all of it and just bring it into sentences that make sense. So we're all good so far? Okay, awesome. So the use of imagination. How does imagination work with healing? And I actually believe that imagination is the only way to heal. Imagination is such a powerful tool that humans have that is underutilized and is actually the use of dreams and the use of imagination is a beautiful way to reinterpret things that have happened to you. And also what's interesting is as children, we use imagination every single day. Something happens to us and we go draw about it. We draw a picture, or we sing, or we dance, or we speak to an imaginary friend. And then over the years, we forgot about that. We kind of forgot that I actually think that creativity is the most magnificent coping mechanism that the world has offered us. So what's beautiful as a hypnotist is we actually tap into the power of imagination to heal. All hypnosis is the use of imagination for healing. So it's super cool. Okay, so let's go back to an example. Let's go back to the 7-year-old. So resolution comes in this way. So here's the 7-year-old that has, and a lot of psychology and psychoanalysis is based on the inner child, expressing the inner child, what happened as an inner child. But it's also, and it's not negating talk therapy at all, because there's a lot of merit in talk therapy. But this is interesting because with hypnotic work, and especially regression, you actually go into the inner child. You see through the eyes of the inner child, and the inner child finally gets a chance to speak, to emote, to talk about what happened. And the most beautiful part is actually the reinterpretation, the use of imagination. So how does that work? Okay, so you're 7 years old, you got yelled at. Now you're made to pay attention to this teacher who has told you that you're less than intelligent, you're not capable. You lost your confidence in that minute, and the world is coming to an end. Okay. So now as the adult looking back, and again, I get there through guided meditation, through visualizations, through counting you down, relaxing your mind and body. And then what's interesting is through the wording that I use, I can say something like, the very first time you had emotions around not feeling good enough. Let's say that's the link to the 7-year-old. So let's say one of the memories pops up is the feeling of being inadequate as this young person. So then I ask this person, the client in front of me, and I say to them, in this moment, how are you feeling? So they say, I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling capable. I'm feeling unintelligent. I'm not feeling good enough, etc., etc. So then I simply say to them, what kind of strengths did you need? What kind of tools? What kind of resources did you need? If you could have anything in this moment, through the use of your imagination, what could have you used as a 7-year-old? So if they felt incapable, they need to feel capable. If they felt unintelligent, they needed to be smart. If they need confidence and stuff like that. So I'll simply say to them, again, through the use of your imagination, float into your body. And if you've ever felt confident before, bring that confidence into the 7-year-old. If you've ever felt capable before, bring it in to the 7-year-old's body. So again, the 7-year-old had this one interpretation of how the scene went, but the adult can look back and renegotiate and say, you know what, I'm not going to carry this for the rest of my life because one teacher one time told me I was stupid. Yeah. So all that is renegotiation through the use of our own creative faculties, our own imagination. It's funny, sometimes I'll even go to the extent of, adding butterflies and rainbows and hearts and stars and fairy dust and stuff like that. And it sounds super silly. But in reality, what it does is it dissipates the charge of the memory, allowing you to be more neutral. Okay, so that's that. I actually do want to share with you, I missed it a little bit earlier, and she mentioned it in my intro, but the reason I got into this was because of my own necessity. I was very young and I was in a car accident that completely changed my life. And talk about imprint, that was a huge imprint. And I had many, many things happen to me in my life before that. Yet this one specific instance created the biggest imprint in my mind. Yet the fortunate part about that was it is just an imprint. So my healing came actually through hypnosis, and that's why I do it now. And that's why I'm so passionate and such an advocate for this work, because I would not be alive and standing without it. So a little bit about that. I was seeing a therapist who was an amazing woman, but effectively I had PTSD to the extent where if I left my house, I would be struck by lightning and be dead in that moment. I had such terrible PTSD that I was one person, and within 30 seconds, my accident happened very quickly. It smashed into me. I was handicapped for a while, physically and mentally. I had to learn how to walk and talk again. So what happened after 6 months of being with this therapist, who I actually connected with, I liked her, but I recognized that I could not talk my trauma out. I felt the same way. So I was introduced to a trauma therapist whose specialty was hypnosis. And I didn't know she did hypnosis. Had I known she did hypnosis, I would have ran the other way. Yeah. I was super afraid and super skeptical about it because I just didn't know what it was. And when I first met her, she told me that one of the things she specializes in is hypnosis. So after a couple of meetings with her and really becoming fond of her and seeing that she's super intelligent, and actually after leaving my first psychologist, I was really just looking for someone with someone that was kind of 3 steps ahead of me, rather than me feeling that I was running circles around the person. And not to say it like that, it's just I was looking for someone more intellectual, and that was it. So I found it in this woman, and then she happened to do hypnosis. So after 6 times of meeting with her, I decided to do it, and within the first session, she began changing my life. And within 2.5 months, 3 months, my PTSD, my depression, my anxiety, everything was gone. And that's a longer story, but we're not getting into that now. Okay, so, and again, that was a huge imprint that was allowed to effectively shift in my mind, to be renegotiated, and to be allowed to become more neutral. Because we don't have to live our lives through big imprints, big things that have happened to us, we can create a more rational way of thinking of things. What happened to me was terrible, it was horrible, but it's here now. It doesn't have to be here, if you know what I mean. Okay. So now that we have the first two I's, which is imprinting and imagination, and when you combine those two, and when you have a more fuller understanding of what your story is and who you are as your identity, and sometimes things that have happened to you that might not be valid, and then through the use of your power of imagination, we get to the third I, which is intuition. Okay. How many of you think that you are very connected to your intuition? Yeah? Okay. How many of you believe in the fact that there is intuition or higher knowing or anything in that realm? Yeah? Beautiful. Okay. So intuition. Intuition is the third I. It's another fun I, and it's actually an I never believed in before. Actually, before I do what I do, I was a very rational person. I was never into anything spiritual of the sort. It really turned me off. And now I'd say I'm a more spiritual person, a more open-minded person, but even when I started becoming a hypnotist, it was still very bizarre to me that I was going to be a hypnotist, of all things in life. It was never on my frame of reference even. So before I was a hypnotist, I was in broadcasting for a long time. I used to do hosting and production and all of that. So I had the desire to leave it after my accident. And I also had the big desire after what happened to me to enter the world of healing through hypnosis. But to leave a mainstream job doesn't make any logical sense to go into something as abstract as being a hypnotist. So I couldn't touch it. But intuitively speaking, I had the desire to leave it. So basically, intuitively speaking, I didn't listen, and that has happened to me so many times. And if I can tell you how many times I've gotten in trouble by not listening to my intuition, that's a whole other story. So I had actually another incident that happened, and I'll tell you briefly, that basically pushed me out and said, now it's time, Danna, to change direction. So basically what happened, I was still working in production, and I got a phone call one time from a friend of mine who was a director, and he asked me, he's producing a short film, do I want to be the producer on the short film? And I said, yeah, sure, sounds good. So I went, and let's just say I got there, and the producer role was definitely not what I thought it would be, but I went with it anyway. And later in the day, he approaches me, and the actor that was supposed to play a reporter happened to not be able to make it tomorrow. Can I sub for that person? So I said, okay. You know, I had all these roles thrown at me. And then after that, he asked me if I could, the next morning at 5 a.m., basically pick up two actresses that need to be brought to set. Yeah. And two parts of Miami that I don't frequent, Hialeah and Doral. Yeah, at 5 a.m. So I basically said, listen, you know, if you really want me to sub for this actor, like I have to learn my lines, potentially can you find someone else? He said, okay. End of the day, he can't find anyone. Okay, so next morning it's 5 a.m. I'm on the road going to Hialeah. I pick up the first actress. Everything's okay. It's pitch black. I'm groggy. I'm tired. It's fine. I go to pick up the second actress, and I go into the gate of this gated community, and I go to pick her up, and the gate was broken, so it was left open. So as I'm leaving, I pick up the second actress. As I'm leaving, I hear boom, boom, boom. All four of my tires pop.
Oh my God.
Yeah, not kidding. So all four of my tires pop. So apparently I get huge signals from cars, whatever that means. Anyway, so all four of my tires pop, and I'm freaking out, obviously, on the side of the road in a city I'd never been to before. And with two elderly women that don't speak English. Yeah. So I'm stuck. So I call my friend, the director, and I say, hey, this is what happened. Can you help me out? And he basically gave me no consolidation, no support. He said, just get the actresses to set. That's it. So I figure a way to get the actresses to set. I'm stranded on the side of the road, frustrated, so upset. Anyway, long story short, really upset. $500 later, I was pushed out. I said, no more. This was my sign. I am done with this. So then I basically bit the bullet and said, you know what, I'm following my intuition and I'm doing what I need to do. I was going to do a guided meditation for you, but we don't have time today, so I'm going to have to wrap this up. So the guided meditation basically was going to be, if there's any goals or any aspirations you have over the next year. It was about a 5-minute meditation of just allowing you to visualize it, and also what happens when you see something in your mind, anything that you can see, anything that you can visualize, even if it's a very, very abstract dream, something that you think is absolutely impossible to attain, if you can see it, the subconscious mind will find a way to make it happen. So vision is a big thing. Actually, I used this meditation. It was a technique that was used on me by a colleague because we practice on each other. It was a technique used on me that I was writing my book, the book that I wrote. I was writing it for 5 years, completely stuck, completely overwhelmed by this project. It was way bigger than me. And actually, after doing this visualization, after 5 years, this one little visualization, after a week, my book was finished. Yeah, why? Because my brain had the perception that I was writing a book, and then after the visualization, I was writing a book. So that's how I wanted to guide you through, but maybe at a later date. Anyway, just to conclude. I'd like to impart to you that dreams and imagination and who we are and our aspirations are not silly. Frankly, they're the opposite. Every single person, every single human being is here for a reason, and our dreams are actually the guides to our higher purpose. So what we desire is actually the blueprint to what it is we're actually meant to be doing on Earth. So that's not to say quit your job tomorrow and leave and, Danna said something, I'm gone. No, that's not that at all. But it is saying that if you do have a dream, there is something to say about working on your dream at night, or finding a logical and practical way to actually attaining it. So the way I see getting back to who you are, and actually I think even the simplest purpose, even fulfilling the simplest purpose on Earth, is actually just being who you are. Just accepting yourself for who you are and allowing that expression on Earth. I think that is it's a very big deal, and it's actually a beautiful purpose. So in reality, I think that with those 3 eyes, recognizing your imprint, recognizing the stories that you've been told that are either valid or not valid, who you are as a person has been created by these memories over time. So recognizing those imprints and potentially working on those imprints, whether through meditation, through time, through hypnotic work, anything. And recognizing that sometimes things people have told you in the past might not hold truth. Recognizing also the power of your imagination and the power of your dreams, and utilizing the tools that your imagination gives you. And also more fully connecting to your intuition. And I think if you do those 3 things, then you will become more fully aligned with who you are. And when you become more fully aligned with who you are, not only will you be more fulfilled, will you be more happy, will you be more in the magic, tapping into that magic of your own flow. But I think actually that if you do all those 3 things, then there's the 4th eye that I didn't mention, which is your impact. I believe that if you become more fully aligned with who you are and you tap into the magic of your own flow, then there's only one way, and it's very natural. You will naturally become who you're meant to be, and you'll have that impact that you're meant to have on the world. So, thank you very much.